Orgasmic enlightenment, where the sexual and spiritual come together. I'm Kim Anami, and I'm a holistic sex and relationship coach and a vaginal weightlifter. In this show, we explore all things intimate. I believe that our sexual energy is life force, creative energy, and we can use it to shape our worlds, strengthen our relationships, and self-actualize. I blend the most avant-garde information from neuroscience, ancient sexual practices like Tantra and Taoism, to renegade wellness modalities to show you how to create gourmet sex in your lives. Come one, come all. 5 steps to cervical orgasms. Cervical orgasms are the holy grail of female orgasms. They are the most powerful, pleasurable, and life-changing orgasm a woman can have. And I say life-changing because they truly do change your life, and I am not exaggerating. If the purpose of our sexual energy is to create new life, this is exactly what these orgasms do. They birth new life every time you have them. Not necessarily little babies kind of life, but at the very least, some kind of shedding of the old skin of the self and a rebirth, a renewal, a metamorphosis. I have used cervical orgasms for decades in place of therapy, though, good therapy is great, but I would say it's like supplemental to having cervical orgasms, which I consider to be essential good fuck medicine for all women. I have spent hours, thousands of hours processing trauma and negative experiences from all parts of my life, but especially those connected to the heart and my sexuality via doggy style position, which happens to be the best position for having cervical orgasms, hands down. The vagina is an all-chemical cauldron. It stores emotions and experiences. If they sit there unattended and unprocessed, these can later show up as all kinds of things like cysts and growths and other symptoms of unwellness and stuck energy in the reproductive system. If you lovingly and consciously fuck these things out of you, it's literally like fucking the shit out of you. You can transform all of these stuck feelings and energies into power and wisdom and experience, rebirthing them and you. So let's talk about what cervical orgasms typically feel like. So I would say they are characterized by 5 main qualities. The first, intense full body pleasure. The second, tears and overwhelming emotions. And we'll break all of these down in a moment. The third would be feeling high. Like if you've ever taken ecstasy before, that's what it's like, but much better and all natural. The fourth would be that they can last for hours and days rather than the few seconds that the typical clitoral orgasm lasts for. And the fifth would be a sense of being reborn, a spiritual reset where you come into yourselves, just like the French phrase la petite mort, the little death and rebirth. So let's go into these in more detail. So the first quality is intense full body pleasure. Unlike clitoral orgasms, which are localized at the clitoris, cervical orgasms radiate out from your pelvis into your whole body. Every cell of you feels like it's bathing in intense pleasure and euphoria. Beyond the body high, though, is the soul high. And not only do these feelings encompass your body, but your entire being, which leads us to the second quality of tears and overwhelming emotion. People often say that they feel like they've seen God and they feel totally at peace with themselves and the universe. And this is my experience. I have a sense that everything is right in the world. I'm open. I trust myself. I trust life to bring me good things. I trust that I can surrender and open to the universe itself because it will support me. So you know the kinds of tears that you cry when you're so overwhelmed with love and beauty and emotion, not sad tears necessarily, but tears of awe. So these are cervical orgasm tears, though I will say that at times I have cried deep, deep tears of release and catharsis. And women usually don't know what the source is of their crying, as in, it wasn't necessarily tried to a particular incident or trauma, and it doesn't matter. All that matters is that your body and your psyche have found a way to release some very deep stuff, and you are letting them by going bravely into these orgasms. In Taoist sexual reflexology, which maps out all of the reflexology points in the vagina and the vulva, the cervix is considered to be the heart point. Being stimulated at the cervix helps to open the heart, and women need to have, at least to some degree, an open heart to get to these orgasms. So that's why they feel like a combination of your vagina and your heart and your spirit opening all at once. The cervix is the gateway between worlds. This is the doorway between life and death. It opens during birth to pass new life, and it opens at ovulation and menstruation to let the possibilities, or not, of life pass through. This is a spiritual gateway for women. These orgasms clear out old residue from the heart, the vagina, and a woman's entire being. I have often said that a few hours spent fucking and having deep spiritual orgasms is worth hours and hours and hours in the therapist's chair. And like I said, I still think that therapy is great, but this is a power tool you have available to you as a woman, so use it. The third quality is feeling like you are high. So there is an energetic pathway going from the cervix all the way up to the crown chakra. Opening and activating the cervix turns on this pathway, sending sexual energy all the way up to the crown. This is your spiritual center. So you open up this connection to your higher self and your spiritual sight. After my first cervical orgasm, I remember walking out into the world feeling like I was completely high, and I had insight into all kinds of situations and people, yet I was utterly calm and full of trust and open to the world. I felt centered and grounded and beautiful. You know, the moments where you're so at ease in your own self and you just love being in your own skin? Well, that's it times 100. It's lit from the vagina to the crown. And the vagus nerve in the body, which is considered to be the spiritual nerve, also goes from the cervix all the way up to the crown. And so you're activating all of these very powerful energy pathways within yourself, and you're liberating your sexual energy to where, you know, for most people, this is a quite base, lustful, kind of lowest common denominator experience. And you're elevating that up to the most spiritual portal that you have and combining these energies, which is, you know, incredible. So the next quality I said is that they can last for hours and days. So clitoral orgasms are like a sugar high, but shorter. There's a quick burst of intensity and then it fades, and you're often left with a blood sugar plummet. Cervical orgasms are like organic, biodynamically grown food that feeds you for days after. It helps to build you into a better person. So these physical, emotional, and spiritual sensations remain for hours, pulsating, reverberating through your body. Like I said, they act like this giant cleansing scrub brush type mechanism and rebirthing you, right? Like I would say resetting your cells, and we'll get to that in a moment. But some people, like for me, for example, I'll feel this for days afterward. And these orgasms reach down into your cells, clearing out old residue and rebooting them. And this is why people feel like they're vibrating at a higher level after these orgasms, and they feel like this for days afterward, because the more that you have of them, the higher you build and vibrate. It's this cumulative practice. So it's like starting a meditation routine. And if you do it sporadically, you get some benefit out of it. But if you make it a daily commitment, you create this cumulative build of positivity in your life. It's like a rolling wave that just keeps getting bigger and bigger, making it harder to ever fall back down to a level of, let's say, pessimism and negativity. So you raise your vibration so high that it's like protection and insurance against falling. The same happens with these orgasms. They are superfood for the soul and for all of your cells. They help to self-actualize you. Which leads us to point number 5, the spiritual reset, this concept of coming into yourself, the little death and rebirth. So your sexual energy contains the blueprint of you. All of your DNA and yourself is housed here. When you tune into this energy, and especially going as deeply into it as you do in cervical orgasms, you reset yourself. It's like the rebooting of a computer, and you wipe it clear of any kinds of viruses and malware and anything that takes it off of its true course and its original settings, these false programs that get layered on top of, right? And it resets it to its original self. And that's exactly what happens with these deeper orgasms. You reset your entire autonomic nervous system, your ANS, and you bring yourself back in touch with your authentic, unconditioned, unprogrammed, true self. And this is probably the most powerful action of cervical orgasms. Way more powerful than any kind of drug experience or anything else that you could take or do. And it all comes from you, from within, for free, without you having to be dependent on anything or anyone else. So yes, you may have a partner who helps you to get there, but plenty of women, myself included, have cervical orgasms through self-pleasure. So the idea of getting to cervical orgasms, I would say the 5 best tools to get you there can all be summed up with one phrase, which is feeling connected. These aren't the kinds of orgasms you can phone in. Your vagina and your cervix are the ultimate truth-telling barometers. If you aren't present and connected and feeling the love, they won't come. It's as simple as that. Clitoral orgasms are a lot more forgiving. You can bust these out watching porn or fucking someone you aren't really that into, but not the cervix. The cervix is all about deep and sacred truth. So there are 3 levels that you need to be connected on: to your vagina, to yourself in general, and if you have a partner, then to your partner. So here are the best ways to get there. Number 1, using a jade egg. Vaginal numbness is the source of so many female issues, and this numbness is symbolic of all of the deeper ways women aren't connected to their sexuality. Vaginal numbness is also the product of physical atrophy. A weak, uninhabited vagina just isn't going to feel anything or communicate with you. So the best remedy for this is regular use of a jade egg. All you need is 10 to 15 minutes a day, 3 to 4 days a week, and you will begin to build the articulation and strength in the vagina so that it becomes a mover and shaper in your life. It becomes a compass for you. So then you begin to fully occupy it as your power source, and you amplify all of the physical sensations within it. I teach a full step-by-step jade egg exercise routine in the Vaginal Kung Fu Salon and in my Yoni Egg Kit and Salonette, which you can find in the Anami Alchemia shop. Second would be yoni massage. So these are tools that you can use to release tension, tightness, and energetic trauma in the vagina. We de-armor the vagina when we remove any kinds of walls and protection that have been built up over the years. By doing this, you awaken and you activate the self-healing and creative powers of your reproductive organs on a physical level and emotional and spiritual. And since cervical orgasms are nothing if not emotional and spiritual, then this is essential to do. So I have a full yoni massage step-by-step practice in the Vaginal Kung Fu Salon that you can check out. Third would be our cervical orgasm couture dildo. So I mentioned before that it is totally possible to achieve cervical orgasms on your own. All you need is a good-sized cock, and I can give you that. I have designed 2 different cervical couture dildos, which we carry in our Anami Alchemia online shop. We have Anahata, which is actually the Sanskrit word for heart, which is apropos. This is your phase 1 dildo. It's a longer specimen. And then Siva, which is phase 2, and this is a much girthier model. I recommend using these in tandem with Akasha, which is our G-spot opener, as part of our Holy Trinity set. This way, you can fuck yourself progressively, starting with Akasha, which will open up your G spot and prime and warm up the vagina. And then you move on to Anahata, which stimulates the cervix directly and begins to help that to open and release. And then you finish off with this deep sense of fullness with Siva. So this way, you open the vagina incrementally all the way home. The fourth suggestion would be my vaginal kung fu salon. Not only do you learn to use and master the jade yoni egg, but you build more sensation and strength in the vagina. The VKF salon also helps you to heal past trauma, rewires your nervous system, and clears emotional blockages, as well as any negative programming and beliefs that you may have picked up along the way. This includes sexual abuse, trauma from your upbringing, and even beliefs that you may have about your sexuality and what it means to be a woman. All of these things can create blockages which inhibit you from tapping into your true self and your true sexual creative power. So anything that's standing in the way of you inhabiting your body is going to show up in bed. It shows up in the way of low libido, lack of lubrication, and then most definitely a lack of orgasm. Once you've done this internal feng shui, you clear away the debris that covers over your true self and your true vagina. And then you can claim what's rightfully yours, cervical orgasms, and wetting the bed with your ejaculate. The fifth suggestion would be my How to Be a Well-Fucked Woman salon. So the other major component to having cervical orgasms is learning to let go. I said that your heart has to be open to have cervical orgasms. You have to be able to surrender and open yourself on such a deep level. So this is an ongoing process of learning to communicate and express your truth. And if you have a partner, to keep the conversation flowing and open with them. So you're always expressing your deepest parts. You're not hiding. You're not trying to be, polite and not share these things. All of the things need to come out. So once you do that, your orgasms will reflect just how close and open you are, both with yourself and, say, a partner. If you're very connected, then these orgasms come easily. If you hold each other at a distance and you're content, go along with the don't ask, don't tell, don't rock the boat kind of relationship, you will never get to these orgasmic places. So vaginal kung fu and How to Be a Well-Fucked Woman are like parts 1 and 2 of How to Be Well-Fucked. And vaginal kung fu goes more specifically into the jade egg work and all things vaginal, like a female body user's manual. And Well-Fucked Woman goes more deeply into the art of feminine energy, how to surrender more deeply, how you communicate with your partner, and a lot of specific sexual techniques. So both of these salons comprise a woman's complete sexual education. All right, so let's take this even further, and we will speak to this week's Well-Fucked All-Star, who is Sarah. Sarah has come out of a deeply religious upbringing where sexuality and women's bodies were totally shamed. And from that place, she has navigated her way out of that and all the way into the holy land of cervical orgasms. So she's an alumni of Vaginal Kung Fu and my How to Be a Well-Fucked Woman salon. Well-Fucked All-Stars. Welcome, Sarah. It's fantastic to have you here.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us all about your journey to cervical orgasms.
Awesome. Yay. Okay, so I'm so excited to share this because once it happened to me, I was like, I need to scream this from the rooftop. So here we go. But I really don't know where to start, so I'll just pick a spot. But my journey to it was coming into learning about your work, basically, because I grew up in a huge family. I have 7 sisters, and on my mom's side, they're Christian. On my dad's side, they're Jewish, but we went to a Baptist private school. And so I had a lot of religion in my life. And even though there was variation in those religions, one common clear message was streaming through all of them, and that was that sex was bad, it was dark, it was wrong, that orgasms were bad, dark, and wrong, and pleasure was also bad, dark, and wrong. And so I grew up with a very warped view on orgasm and self-pleasure, and I just didn't really know anything about the female body except for that I have boobs and I can bleed and that I can give birth. Like that's all I really do.
And
And
usually with pain, all of those things with pain.
exactly. And it was something to be ashamed about. And it was something to be uh, just not proud of, right? And
Yep.
that was really frustrating because when you grow up with a lot of women in your life, you know, I looked at women as like just these amazing people that could do so many things. And then I don't know, I just felt so lost because I had all of this pressure and this almost spiritual abuse, I guess you could say, telling me that it was bad and wrong and shameful to be a woman. And so I grew up hating that. I
Yeah.
hated the fact that I had a vagina. And
Right.
with that came hatred towards that part of me. And so when I found your work,
And I just, hang on, I just want to jump in and
sure.
say, like, I think that's pretty normal because there's so much negativity and shame and blame placed on women
Mm,
and their sexuality that I think it's pretty natural that women growing up in this culture, girls,
mm-hmm.
women, are going to internalize that, right? And have some kind
Exactly.
of, the very least would be dissociation, the worst would be like a really negative, loathing type relationship to their bodies. And
Right.
that's all reinforced through allopathic medicine. Like, oh, you have a
Right.
difficult period, we'll just put a giant band aid on that and put you on hormone blockers for the rest of your life, right? Like,
Exactly.
so everywhere you look, the dominant messaging is, yeah, being a woman is difficult, painful, and all you can really do is sort of grin and bear it. There's not a real solution. There's no real joy in it. Just tough luck. You were born a
Exactly.
woman.
Exactly. No, you said it right. And it was so frustrating too, because in my mind, I'm thinking, well, you know, if God made me that way, like if I was, you know,
Right.
I'm a female, like what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
And I actually found this in a lot of my own sisters too, like where they hated it as well. And then I found out like my friends hated being a woman as well. And I was just like, man, like this sucks. Like, what do
Yeah.
we do about it? And then when I found your work, and it's actually funny because even though I'm not religious, I'm still spiritual and I do believe in God. And I was like, all right, you know what? I'm just gonna pray and ask God for a sign because this loathing it was carrying out into other areas of my life. Like I hated dating, I hated opening myself up because I just didn't feel comfortable in my own
Mm-hmm.
skin, which
Right.
was really sad. And so I remember literally just praying. I was like, God, angels, universe, whoever, like, can you help me out here? I hate feeling this way. Please send me something to help me feel better about myself. And literally the next day, this girl who I was following her on Facebook, and she's like, "Oh my God, you guys need to check out this woman. She's lifting a surfboard with her vagina." And this is back in like 2000, I think 14, 15 or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, what? And so I clicked on it and I was like, oh my God. I was like, that's amazing. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I was a little bit like freaked out, not in a bad way, but just kind of like, wait, like how is she doing that though? You know, like
Right.
and it was so it was more of a curious thing. And yeah, I went to your website and I just gorged all your material and I was like, oh, she has a salon. And uh, you know, and I consumed as much of your content as I could. And then I enrolled in your class G Spot Ecstasy. And then it was really powerful for me, but then I realized I needed deeper work. Like I needed like a complete rewiring, reprogramming of my subconscious mind, my body, everything. And so
So just
then,
so people understand, like the G Spot Ecstasy is a 4 week do it yourself,
yeah,
focusing on the G Spot program, and
yeah,
then you're gonna, I think, talk about vaginal kung fu as the deeper, longer, more in depth
right.
study. Yeah.
Exactly. And G Spot Ecstasy was amazing, absolutely. But I knew I needed more groundwork because of my past. And so yeah, I enrolled in vaginal kung fu and I learned about jade eggs and lifting things with my vagina and like just all these crazy stuff. And I healed so much, so much. And then right after taking vaginal kung fu, I was like, okay, I want to take well fucked woman, because I felt like it was part one and part two. And
Yes. Yeah.
it was honestly, Kim, like seriously, it was the sex education I never had that I always needed. And it just completely changed my life. Like I can say that hand on heart. And from that, at the time, I had a boyfriend. We're no longer, together. It's been a couple years, but when I told him about this whole, all these different ways, like that a woman could orgasm, because I always thought that you could only orgasm through your clit and that was it.
Right. Like
And
most people think, that's most people's
right,
perception. Yeah.
yeah. And my boyfriend at the time was actually like, no, actually, you could have like things called G-spot orgasms. And I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And he was like, yeah, I'll show you. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know you could do this. And so then I thought that, oh, I needed a man to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then your work counteracted that and said, no, like you can have a man there, or and you can also do it by yourself. And
Right.
so we just kind of started slow and worked up to G-spot orgasms. And then my first cervical orgasm I had with him. And then, funny enough, like a few weeks later, we ended up breaking up. And I remember being like, oh no, like, can I no longer have these because
Right.
I'm not dating him?
Yeah.
But then I just kept going back to your salon and I was like, well, Kim says that she can have them like by someone touching her arm. So like if she can do that, I know I can. And I just kept telling myself like, and I know it might sound a little crazy, but I would tell myself like, I am a multi-orgasmic woman. I am a well-fucked woman. I would literally say it to myself over and over. And there's so much power in your mind if, because if you train your mind to believe something, your body will follow. And yeah, it
Vaginal
was
orgasmic affirmations.
exactly. And then I would tell myself that I was like, I have a woke as fuck vagina. And that's when I just kept telling myself that over and over,
A
like,
woke as fuck vagina. That's such an
woke as
awesome
fuck.
one. I love it.
Exactly. And so I just kind of kept telling myself that, following your salon, like just doing everything you said. And I was like, she's right. She was right. And I started having them on my own. And it was in that moment I knew, even though I was grieving the heartbreak of this person that we were no longer together, I knew I was going to be okay. Not because I could just now have all these orgasms, but I felt like, oh, I feel healed. I feel like I have access to something that I didn't have before. And I honestly felt like, in a way, I felt closer to God. Maybe for someone that's spirit, source, divine, whatever you believe in, but I felt closer to God. And I was like, wow, like he didn't, make this to be bad. He made this to be pleasurable. Like I wouldn't have the capability to do that if it wasn't in me,
Right.
and so it just completely changed my life. So thank you.
Well, that's amazing. And I love that you liken it to or talk about it being a spiritual experience, because that was my own journey from the very beginning, like having my first cervical orgasm, which was actually the first orgasm I ever had.
Oh
And
wow.
feeling like I was in this transcendent, ecstatic, super, like all
Mm,
is one kind of place. And that's
mm-hmm.
how we describe them, as being these super powerful connectors. And the idea, at least in Taoist sexology, is that the cervix, the point there is connected to the vagus nerve, which goes all the way up
Right,
to the crown chakra and is often referred to as the spiritual nerve of the body. And
right,
that when we activate that energy, it goes all the way up to the crown chakra through the heart. So it helps to open the heart, and we also need an open heart. And then it really just explodes out, where we attain this sense of enlightenment from these orgasms. And that's why I say that these are some of the most powerful self actualizing and personal growth tools that women have available to them. And they only make us better people. And if women aren't having cervical orgasms, I'd say they're operating at a deficiency, right? Because you don't have this extremely powerful tool and shortcut to these wild, amazing, higher level places in ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when you talked about that, like for me, it came from a place of it was the most powerful tool I had for personal transformation and spiritual evolution, because not only did it heal me from like the inside, but also the outside. Like it was, and that's, I think, what your work is based on. You can't sugarcoat stuff. You can't just treat a symptom. Like we're going to the root of the issues here. And cervical orgasms, what they do is they amplify, at least in my experience, they amplify your life and all the good things. But then it's almost like dusting off these old cobwebs and these dirty files that you haven't really looked at, and it causes you to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And like you said, it's this self-actualizing tool that it's just completely transformational.
Beautifully said. Yeah. And, I look at them as, over the years, ways that I've worked through trauma and processing, like you said, to process even your breakup. They're really
Mm-hmm.
good at going through acute situations. Like we take our grief, our stress, our unresolved trauma, we like take it into the vagina, and it works as this alchemical cauldron to transform it into power,
Mm-hmm.
into bliss, into wisdom. And we also were able to release these things. Like one of the hallmarks of cervical orgasms is tears, like having these,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes often deep, guttural, crying tears that we often don't even know the source of. And we don't need to know the source of. All we need to do is follow that trail into that feeling and then allow it to overtake us and then move through us. And so it's this incredibly deep portal and vessel for transformation if we are able to go there. And I think another real pivotal piece of getting to cervical orgasm is courage, because when you're standing at this abyss of emotion or like what a unknown, you have to keep going. Like that's a real trait of them, is that a lot of women maybe come up to this place in themselves and they feel some kind of fear, or like there's, like I said, like a giant abyss, and so they pause and they contract and they hold back, and so they don't go there. And I think the real price of admission is this sense of courage and continuing to open and continuing to trust and fall. And I think that cervical orgasms are so much like spiritual experiences, because they're the same concept of opening to a power, opening to an energy greater than you, whatever your spiritual belief system is, whether it's a traditional religion or you're just,
Mm-hmm.
have a spiritual concept of life, that you're opening, thy will be done. Like this energy, this presence has some kind of greater knowledge and wisdom than us, and we open to that. And that's the same thing with the trust in the orgasm. Like in God and orgasm we trust.
Amen to that. No, and I love what you said about it taking courage, because so I'm fascinated by words and languages, and I just love it. And the Latin word
Right.
for courage, it means cur, and it means the heart. And that's what I felt like cervical orgasms did for me, was it opened up my heart, just opened and opened it and opened it. And that's, I think, part of the formula to having them is you have to have an open heart, and they can help you open your heart. Because after my boyfriend and I broke up, I mean, I was really in love with this guy. Like I was the best girlfriend I could have ever been. And my friends, after we broke up, they were like, oh, well, just like go date another guy. And I was like, no, like I'm not going to get under someone to get over somebody else. Like I
Right.
need to process this. Like I need to get through it. And whereas he took that route and then never dealt with the hurt and the pain of it, and is apparently still dealing with that. Whereas me, I feel completely healed of it, stronger than before. But I think that that's what one of the greatest tools you can have is when if you're going through heartbreak, like have cervical orgasms or take
Right.
salon, Ken's salon, everyone, so that you can learn how to have them, and you'll be just fine. They're the ultimate heartbreak healer.
Yes, absolutely. So, can you describe for us how do cervical orgasms feel to you? Like physically, emotionally, spiritually? You've touched a bit on the spiritual element, but how do
Mm-hmm.
they also feel in these other realms?
Sure, yeah. It's kind of interesting because I remember when I first learned that they were even possible, because I didn't even know I had a cervix until I was like 19, 20 years old, because I all I was taught was I had a vagina. So I
Right.
didn't know any anatomy on that. So for me physically, they're nothing like a clitoral orgasm. Clitoral orgasms, for anyone listening, they kind of remind me of like when you walk up like a little 15-foot ledge and then you like jump off like a 10-foot waterfall and it's like woo. Whereas and then like it's done, like goodbye. Whereas a cervical orgasm, to me it feels like you're just going like further and deeper and deeper and deeper, and you're vibrating and it's consuming, it's powerful, and it spreads throughout the entire body. This it's like this orgasmic, spiritual, enlightening, intense, but also safe in a way climax, and it lasts longer. For me, I've had them last for hours at times. Not every single time, but they're definitely something that you feel throughout your entire body, and it's like you just got this like incredible massage, spiritual tune up, and like you just let out all these tears of emotion that you don't even know what you were crying about. um, and it just feels incredible. I can't, I've never had anything feel like it, so it's kind of hard to compare it to something else because it's not like anything else. And I just always, every time I have one, I feel healed. I feel like everything's going to be okay and everything is safe. But it's not like a clitoral orgasm where it's centrally located to the vagina. It's literally just like inside out, every fiber of your being, all your cells, your hair, your eyelashes, everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love it. And, it's hard, in some ways, it's hard to describe it physically because it's physical, but to me, it's always felt mostly spiritual, like and energetic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, there's
Yeah.
physical pleasure. It's like a full, like if you take a clitoral orgasm and spread it throughout your entire body, like there's a sense of it being a full body orgasm. But
Mm-hmm.
what's even stronger than that is more like what you said, like waves of bliss and pleasure, but like this sense of serenity and deep faith in the world. Like you
Right.
just said, like everything is safe and everything's going to be okay. And that's what it's like, having the most open, full heart you've ever had, and multiply that by 10 and spread it all over your whole body. Like you said, every cell.
Right.
And then you're existing on this
Right.
different plane, like everything that you do. Like I remember after some of those early experiences for me, like going out into the world after and feeling like I was floating, or I was in this divine, absolute trust and faith, and like every iota of circumstances in the world was lining up in this divine spiritual way. And I had insight into that and utter faith in life, versus
Exactly.
like kind of an anxiety, scurrying kind of mentality or way of being that many people I think exist in. It's very different, and that to me is like the most powerful part of it. Like, and that's why I've always sort of downplayed the importance of clitoral orgasms, because like you said, it's like a quick hit and then a drop and then it's over, and I've never really
Right.
felt like they contributed to my betterment as a person or to the
Right.
betterment of my life. And
Right.
because, for me, I was fortunate to have had cervical orgasms so early on that was my template. This is what sex
Right.
is. This is what orgasms are. And it wasn't
Right.
until a few years later, even, that I experienced a clitoral orgasm, and I was like, "Oh, this is fun, but like this isn't really an orgasm. Like, like
Right.
this
No,
is whatever, like
exactly.
good for a kick, But like this isn't really what orgasms are all about."
Yeah, exactly. Clitoral orgasms, I think they're good for like when you go and visit in-laws and like family members who are kind of annoying, and you're like, I just, okay, there's no, because I don't do drugs or drink or anything. So I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna, go smoke a cigarette. Let me go to the bathroom and like touch my clit for a minute. And then like, okay, now I have like a little bit of a way to mentally process being around these annoying people. But that's, I think, what they're good for, in my opinion.
Well, I
But
use them for my coffee breaks, right? Like I
yeah,
talk about stimulating the clitoris, similar to what you're saying, like to get a burst of energy, to get a
yeah,
hit. I don't do coffee, I do orgasm. So I'll go and
right,
stimulate myself to get this sense of pleasure and bliss and rejuvenation, but it's not the deep, life changing version of that vaginal orgasms and especially cervical orgasms would give a person. So there's a
exactly.
time and a place, but to me, like the real pursuit, the real holy grail is cervical orgasms.
Yes,
So, what,
absolutely.
so you've described, is there anything else you would add about the effects you've seen in your outer life? Because you have described that, and like I said, I so relate to that, and you've said it very beautifully. Is there anything else you would say about that? Like how they've changed you as a person?
Yeah, I mean, and that was the thing too. I remember because like when I first found your work, and I was like, okay, like I believe in investing in my growth, whether it's spiritually, mentally, emotionally. And then this was the first time I was like, okay, I'm investing in my sexual
Sexual
growth, which was kind
growth.
of a new thing for me. And but I was like, okay, like I really believe in this woman, and I believe in her work, and I believe that if I invest in this, it will come back to me tenfold. And I'm not sure why I felt like that, because at the time I wasn't doing good financially, and I was very lost and confused in my life. This was years ago, but I I just believed that I would make back that investment. And what I think the biggest exterior result I've seen is actually in wealth, in my business, in money. Um, Before I was really struggling financially, I now own a few different companies. I own my own coaching business, and that has just skyrocketed in growth. I own a consulting marketing business with my sister. We're just launching another CBD skincare line, and that's been doing great. So um, and it's just crazy because I that wasn't something I was expecting. Like I wasn't expecting like, oh, if I have cervical orgasms, like I'm gonna make more cash. Like it's not like that was going on in my head, but it released this feeling of surrender and knowing that I was going to be taken care of. And that's one of the seeds of manifestation. If you want to create and generate more wealth in your life, part of that is having trust and faith. And what better way to practice trust and faith than with orgasming and having and experiencing that on a daily basis? So it was uh, this roadmap almost to wealth, which was not what I was expecting. And I was able to get out of debt. I had some student loans. And yeah, I would say that's the biggest change that I've seen from a physical standpoint. And then also just, I feel more confident in myself, which has helped me to put myself out there more. I do a lot of speaking, and I like going, like speaking and teaching at retreats and stuff. Whereas before I would have been too shy to do that. But I feel like I have this reservoir of confidence in me, and I'm not sure where it comes from at times. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's the orgasms. Like it's that sexual energy. And so I think those would be the two main things that I've seen transform in my exterior life.
I love that. And I think that, in terms of wealth too, and you talked about manifestation, I mean, sexual energy is our life force, creative energy. And when we're really tapping into it and owning it, and I think for women, the deepest way they can do that is through accessing their cervical orgasms and that potential. It just amplifies everything and our ability to create and generate wealth. And, sex and money and creativity are all second chakra issues. And so when
Right.
you help to start to liberate, especially the sexuality, people notice, like, I literally hear things like, money just fell into my lap. And I'm like, well, that's because that's what attracted it to you is your lap. So,
Your lap attracted it. That's exactly right. I
yeah.
love it. I love it. And I found that too, like it's not just expected income, it's also unexpected income. Like I have literally, so I have this thing on my phone where I track unexpected income that flows to me.
Oh,
Because what I have found is that when I track it, I'm activating the part of my brain called the RAS, the reticular activating system part of your brain. And what it does is it filters out certain things and for you to pay attention to. So have you ever been like driving a car and then you get a new car and then all of a sudden you see that same car everywhere and you're like, oh, I never noticed that car before. Well, that's your RAS. And it's your brain saying, okay, pay attention to this. This is important. So what I found is when I track the money, I just keep it on my notes. So I'm like, okay, I track that someone bought my coffee for me for $5. Or I don't really even drink coffee, like tea, $5, and they paid for it. I'll write that down and I'll say thank you, to myself. And then if I get like an upgrade on a flight or like a
right.
free ticket to something or whatever, like it doesn't matter what it is. And I remember actually when I took your salon, I think it was the Well Fucked Woman salon. You sent us like these beautiful oils, and I was like, wow, like I would have had to pay for that, but I didn't because it was given as like an extra gift, so I tracked that. And what I have found is the more I do that and the more grateful I am, mixed with this whole orgasmic sexual energy that's just always brewing, the money, it's almost like it needs to come to me. Like it's like, no, like I want to come to you because you're grateful and you're open and you have faith and you have trust that you can make this happen, that you're deserving of it. So that has been my trick, I guess you could say, for manifesting unexpected wealth. And I'm not talking like $50. I'm talking like since doing your work, I was almost at like over $100,000 of unexpected income, just coming through all different ways, whether it was like winning a little scratch off or someone saying, hey, like here's a free car to use for a year. I mean, it's just crazy the opportunities that come in when you are in tune with that because you're paying attention to it, but then it's also backed up by that sexual energy that's just revving inside of you.
I love that. I love that practice of you tracking the gifts that you're receiving, because it's so powerful. And like, it's one of the tools I use not every day, but at times to just do like, a daily gratitude. Okay, what happened to me today that I'm grateful for, and list 10 to 20
Yeah,
things, right? And then
I love
you
that.
just stay in that place of abundance and, acceptance of receiving all of these gifts because, yeah, like you're activating that part of yourself. So I love that as your tool.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been helpful. I'm grateful for it. So
So, what would you say that some of the most important steps for you were on, like, to get to this place of having cervical orgasms?
taking your salons, number one. I mean, if anyone's listening, like, just take the salon. Like, if you haven't, just take them. That was the first thing because it's one thing to read about it. It's one thing to hear about it and like kind of try to do it on your own. Same thing with like when people try to learn vaginal weightlifting. Like
Right. Yeah.
I remember buying this like jade egg off of Amazon for like $10 or something years ago. And I was like, okay, like you just put some like floss through it and like lift it and I had no clue what the hell I was doing. So I when I took your course, I was like, oh, that's how you do it. So if you want the results that other people have, learn from them. So I would say that was the first thing was taking your salons. But in from a more technical standpoint, the actual process for me is looking at areas of my life where I'm not surrendering, looking at areas of my life where I'm not being honest with myself on how I feel, or if I'm letting people like take advantage of me, because that can retract you from the heart of who you are. And when there is that retraction, the whole point of cervical orgasms, in my view, is to bring you closer to yourself and that heart. So eliminating things that no longer serve you, just from a physical standpoint and a mental, emotional standpoint, and then also practicing surrendering deep breathing, just faith and trust, and then just letting yourself know, like, hey, it's okay to go here. And even if you're with a partner or you're by yourself, no matter what, I've got you. I'm with you. I have your back no matter what, because you are your longest commitment. And the greatest promises, the most excellent promises you'll ever make to anyone is the ones that you make to yourself. And so if you know that you have your back and that you can hold space for whatever comes up from those cervical orgasms, because they can be very intense, and like you mentioned, you can cry about things that you don't even know what you're crying about. um, if you allow yourself to hold space for yourself, then they will come more easily, more quickly, more powerfully, and bring more transformation. So that's kind of been my area of processing it. And then also vaginal weightlifting has been a key integral role in all of this, because if you have a numb vagina, then it's not going to feel good, and there's going to be that disconnect. So the egg has been really a beautiful instrument in allowing me to bridge that gap from where I was to where I wanted to be. But I would say that to learn it from someone, a professional such as you, and learn why it's there and use it as a tool to heal and learn and grow from. And that's what's allowed me to get to that point.
So tell me more about your experience with the jade egg in terms of what it did for, like you mentioned, a numb vagina. Like I talk about that a lot with women, that if the vagina is numb, they can't feel anything and they're just dissociated from it, disconnected. And the egg is such a great tool to reestablish that connection, to bring pleasure back into the vagina. So tell me more about how the jade egg facilitated that for you.
Yeah, well, I did speak about how I grew up in a very religious household, and it was very confusing because, like, we'd celebrate Christmas, but also Hanukkah and like Passover, but also Easter. And so I was
You
really
had all the
confused on what,
gifts.
yeah. And so it was great, but it was also like, wait, what are we doing? Who are we? And so it was really confusing, but that one story, that one theme remained true in all of it, which was like sex and all these things. They were dark, bad, evil, wrong. And so I was taught that it was wrong to insert anything into your vagina
What?
until you were married with a
Anything?
Christian, anything. So not even like a tampon.
Oh my
And so I had
gosh.
this fear of like, and it sounds like I'm not embarrassed by it, but I'm like hearing myself say this out loud. I'm like, wow, like that's really fucked up. Like that I was taught that.
Well, I didn't
And
know that, I've always suspected, like, because a lot of women have issues with putting things in their vagina. Like, you're articulating it as sourced from these teachings in your
sure.
religious paths. But other women have just had this sort of revulsion towards doing that. And then I
Yeah.
always talk about how in the development of the Kegel exercise, like the original Kegel exercise involved putting a device inside the vagina. And then that's where they had this miraculous rate, 90% success rate, curing urinary incontinence, things like that. And
Mm-hmm.
then once it moved on from Dr. Kegel's work, all these other OBGYNs who adapted the practice told women not to put things in their vagina. And I
Right.
honestly think that movement then came out of this fear of telling women to put things in their vaginas, right? Like, and you're kind of
Yeah.
confirming more of the origins of my theory of why that happened, because as soon as they stopped using an internal device, the success rate completely tanked, like immediately
Right.
dropped 50% and then kept plummeting. So it's a pretty big deal. So anyway, carry on. I'm just
Yeah,
interested to
no,
hear
no,
that.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And yeah, it was a very warped belief, but when you're taught that by religious teachers who you're supposed to respect and supposedly care about you, quote unquote, you believe it. And I don't even like to call it like brainwashing. It was like almost brain damaging, because it was so ludicrous and outlandish looking back at it. But at the time, I didn't know any better. How do you know if
Who
you don't
told you
know?
that? Like, who actually said that to you?
So we went to a Baptist private school growing up from the time I was in the second grade to I think the sixth or seventh grade. And when we were in the sixth grade, my teacher, now we weren't Baptist, by the way, but my teacher, then the reason we went to the school was because my great grandmother wanted us to have a good education. And we did get a great education, but everything was like Bible bullshit based, basically.
Tainted
Um,
with. Yeah.
yeah, tainted with. Yeah, they weren't really teaching like the true aspects of it. And she once had all the boys leave for like recess, and she kept all the girls behind. And she was like, "Okay, ladies, I want to talk to you something." And she would not make eye contact with us, and we all thought we were in trouble, me and all the girls in my class. And she's like, "So, around this time, your body starts doing these things, and it will start to release blood," and, basically giving us the period talk. But she told us that, traditional, secular, worldly, whatever, they believe in using tampons. And she said that that was wrong because it would break your hymen and it would all these things. And she said, so you want to use like pads and panty liners and things like that. And she said, if you use a tampon, you are basically breaking your hymen and then you're no longer a virgin.
And God
So
doesn't
that's
like that.
right. And so and I remember just like looking around at my class, like, WTF, right? Like, I did not know what to think. I was just like, okay,
Well,
this seems really odd, but that's what we were taught.
it's so interesting though, this like you cannot know your own body. Like this
Hmm.
imposing or like trying to create this obstruction between you and your own self-knowledge of your body and your sexuality.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that if you explore that, it's wrong and bad and evil and vile. And that makes you vile and evil. And when you're a little girl who just wants to do the right thing, and you've been scared your entire life that if you even tell a tiny little white lie that you're going to go to hell, you're going to want to follow the rules because you don't want anything bad to happen to you. So I just kind of was like, okay, this does not make sense, but I'm going to follow the rules.
Mm-hmm.
And I did until I was about like 18, and then I was like, this doesn't make sense. Like, I mean, I was still like warped in my mind with the whole sex thing, but I definitely knew at 18, I was like, I think it's safe to use a tampon. I think it's safe to, like, I don't think God's going to punish me for that. So there was a little bit of rewiring that I did on my own, just
Mm-hmm.
from my own thought process, but
Mm-hmm.
the bulk of that rewiring came after learning from your salons. So
So
yeah.
fast forward that then you said to the jade egg practice. So how did that
Hmm.
help with that?
Yeah, well, it brought me back to connecting with myself, number one, and knowing that it's okay to insert things into your vagina, and that it's not even just okay, but it can be a wonderful healing transformational thing for you. So there was that. And it also made me feel more connected to myself, that I was doing this to pleasure me, or to heal me, not that it had to be with another person for another guy, that I could do it for me, offer me, only me. And it didn't have to include anything, because that was another thing I was taught, that the purpose of women was to bring pleasure to a man, and that was it. Like, that was a
Right.
woman's purpose, like, raise his babies, have his babies, and give him pleasure, don't be in the way. So and then it also helped me heal, uh and the numbness in there, because when I did start, because you spoke about in your salons, like, the idea or just the invitation, I guess you could say, of like, well, what if you allowed yourself to explore your vagina with your own fingers? What would that be like? And so when I started doing that, I almost felt like I was going to throw up, because I was just like, man, like, because and that's nothing against you. It's just like I was not doing good, like, in that area of my life. I was just like, man, like, I want to believe that this is okay, but everything I've been taught says it's not. And so it allowed me to heal the numbness in there. And then within a couple weeks, I think I had my first G spot orgasm. And
Wow.
and then within oh gosh, I don't even know the time frame from the G spot to the cervical, but it wasn't that long. I had my first cervical orgasm. So, and yeah, I just feel like it's stronger, and I can lift a few pounds with it, and which is cool. And I have like these little weights that I bought, and I have the pouch, the silk pouch it came in, and yeah, it just makes me feel like I'm kind of in a relationship with it, like you mentioned in the salon, and not it just being like, okay, like time to put it on my vagina. It's more like, oh, okay, like, hey, little egg, how are you? Like, okay, cool. Today we're gonna do our vaginal practice. Like, it's almost like I'm talking to it and being like, hey, like, you can take out anything that doesn't need to be in there and put in all the good stuff that does need to be
Mm-hmm.
in there. And so, yeah, it's just been it's like one of my favorite parts of my day, honestly, is that
Aww.
10 minutes of time, and I'll do like a breast massage while I do that with it. So
That's amazing. I love that. And yeah, I mean, the egg practice is multidimensional. The most physical element of it is, yes, building strength and more pleasure, sensitivity, awakening the vagina. But then, because we look at the sexual organs as having all of these energetic qualities and reproductive, creative qualities in the world to birth ideas and birth our thoughts and feelings out into the world, then it takes on this whole other element. And yes, the egg can act as this thing that absorbs negativity out of the vagina and then releases positivity in its place. So, because it's a seed, it's an egg.
exactly, it's very symbolic, and it's very beautiful too. So, and jade, as you know, it's that healing stone. So that right in itself is really powerful. Actually, crazy story. My ex that I spoke about earlier, he was all into the like G-spot orgasms, all that, everything, cervical. He was like, yeah, like let's do it. But when I presented the whole jade egg thing to him, he was like, what? Like that doesn't make sense. And I was like, no, I'm telling you. And my egg that I had at the time, um, I used it every day, and that was during the time where I was doing the most work on healing like my past and all the BS that I was taught. And he could feel the difference too. After even just a week, he was like, wow, like you feel stronger, you feel tighter, you feel like um like even more wet. Like it just came with so many physical benefits, not just for me but also for him. So
I love that element too. I mean, because I teach the jade egg instruction on my retreats that I do twice a year. And
yeah.
so I'll have a day with the women where we do the practices and then they go back to their partners in the afternoon. And the partners can feel the difference even
Yeah.
from one session of working with the egg. And so, yeah, in a week, they can start cracking walnuts and whatever.
Opening up bottles, and I saw your bottle opening challenge that you did. It was amazing. I'm like, oh
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, that was fun. I won that thing. I
you
mean,
did.
there's no one who did that better than me in my vagina, really.
I agree. I
If
agree.
anyone
Props to
doesn't
you.
know what we're talking about, I think it was last year. Was it last year? There was this bottle cap challenge that Jason Statham started online where he did this like roundhouse kick and spun the cap off of a bottle. And then
Yes.
all these other people started to do it and post their versions of it. And so, of course, I posted my version of it, which was me opening up the bottle cap of a bottle with my vagina. So you can find a copy of that video on my YouTube channel.
It's quite the sight. It's amazing.
So, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Um, I mean, honestly, I would just like to say thank you so much for everything you've done, and anyone listening, like, if you haven't taken Kim's salons, like, just take them. I promise you, you'll make back your investments. And, it's just the greatest tool I've found for personal transformation and spiritual evolution, and just healed so, 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 so much. Like, literally, I don't know who I would be if I hadn't found your surfboard lifting vagina in my feed years ago. Like, I literally don't know who I would be. So I'm getting emotional talking about it because to this day, it just continues to give me gifts. And the salons, you have access to them. for forever, and I've taken them over and over. Anytime I want to learn more and grow more, and every time I take it's almost like taking it for the first time because I learned so many new things that I didn't know before. So that would be the one thing I would like to share with anyone. Give yourself that gift because you deserve it.
That's so amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your breakthroughs. And it's so inspiring. Like, it's so wonderful to have you share and be a beacon to other people, especially with your religious background, because that's so common. And people
Mm,
internalize so much of that stuff and often remain mired in it, right? And you were able to kind of
right.
like feel your way out of it and then, take what you like and leave the other stuff. And that's, I think religion and spiritual paths have, definitely have a lot to offer, but they're often colored over by, and they've had editing done by humans, and they've had
Right.
some insertions that probably weren't the original content, right? And so that's the problem. And so we have to then rely on ourselves as this intuitive sounding board to figure out and define our own relationship with spirit and pick apart what we think is true and real
Hmm.
and leave the stuff that has probably just been put in there as edits and control factors. So I
Absolutely.
think it's wonderful that you can share that aspect of it to give people, as I said, be a beacon for them to find their way out of similar circumstances. And, you've come a long way, like from what you've
Mm.
described and your upbringing and that kind of programming, you've come a massive way. So awesome
Yes.
work.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I learned from the best, and and I mean, I have to say, like, it was some of the hardest work I've ever done on myself. It's one thing to go to the gym and or go to therapy, or make your bed every morning, and to try to do things that encourage a positive lifestyle, but to go deep within yourself, to the center, to the heart of who you are, it is some of the harder work, but it's the most rewarding. So don't be afraid to do that, and don't get discouraged. It's a process, and everyone's timeline is different. And if you haven't experienced cervical orgasms, you absolutely can. Just keep telling yourself that you can, and do Kim salons. I mean, I can't refer people to anyone else because there is no one else. I've taken a few other courses, and I'm like, can I have a refund? This sucks. Like, let's just stick with let's just stick with Kim's work. It's the holy grail, and take it from there. So yeah, just do it, and watch your life change for the better, and have a woke ass vagina.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It was such a treat.
Vaginal Kung Fu is coming. Are you? Registration for my legendary 8-week program is now open. Check it out at kimanami.com/vaginal-kung-fu. This episode was brought to you by the Jade Yoni Egg. This is the premier tool on the market for all things super pussy because, yes, it is normal to have a lubricating, orgasming, and ejaculating vagina every day of the week. Side effects of the Jade Egg include multiple orgasms, vaginal orgasms, ejaculatory orgasms, increased lubrication, increased libido, and easier childbirth and faster recovery, ecstatic pleasure and sensation, boosted self-confidence, the reversal of urinary incontinence, easier periods, PMS, and menopause. The life-changing magical egg is found at kimanami.com and Anami Alchemia. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, subscribe and also leave a review. And send someone else the gift of a healthy libido and an off-the-charts love life by sharing this episode with them. We'll be back next week, and in the meantime, many happy orgasms.